hope waving communities together. And it's a series of talks by speakers who deal with art and fashion industries. And in particular, Hélène was able to gather such interesting speakers and give different perspectives on this topic. So this morning we had the pleasure to speak with already a part of these speakers, and now we proceed with Beverly Nadius, who is an artist, activist, educator, and writer. She is Professor Emerita at the University of Washington, USA. Hello, Nadius, we see you online. Beverly Nadius' art's life has straddled the socially engaged margins of the art world, collaborations with activist groups, and community-based art projects. Much of her work deals with ecological and social issues that have affected her and those around her. Remediation and reconstructive visions are key concepts that guide her work. Her primary forms are public installations, digital projects, and artist book that explicitly gather stories from visitors. Beverly will be talking about making art with communities in a time of collapse to lift up positive possibilities despite the dire data. I leave you the word, Beverly.
Thank you so much, Michaela, for inviting me today. It's very early here on in the Pacific Northwest of the U.S. It's actually, I think, just 6 in the morning, and I'm sitting out in my garden to give this talk so I can be well grounded. I'm going to share with you a wide spectrum of perspectives because we live in a time when socially engaged art needs to be seen in all of its perspectives. There's, work that documents what's wrong with our current systems. There's work that asks questions about how to navigate through this perilous time we're facing. And there's work that visually brands our movements. And I'm going to be showing some of those examples today, as well as work that builds bridges between polarized groups and heals traumas caused by the pandemic, the precarity, economic precarity and emotional precarity and violence that many of us are living with, and work that lifts up positive possibilities in the midst of very dire circumstances. Here is my grounding places, my garden, permaculture design, food forests. I live on the unceded, stolen traditional lands of the Coast Salish people and the Puyallup people in the watershed created by Mount Tahoma, also known as Mount Rainier. And I wanted to share that my work has been informed by trainings with Thich Nhat Hanh, Joanna Macy, Bayo Kamalafe, Augusto Boal, Sombufo Somé, and I wanted to give homage to beloved ancestors who have influenced me, including Octavia Butler, Ursula Le Guin, David Graeber, Murray Bookchin, James Baldwin, Grace Lee Boggs, and Audre Lorde. This tree on the left is in front of my house. It includes a sacred altar for our dreams for our future. My cat wanted to join the Zoom for a second here. Here is work that I think is a great example of what most people think of as political art. It's used to brand movements, and we need this kind of work. It's striking, it's seductive, it allows us to think more about what is going on in different parts of the world, different crises, in this case, what is happening in Gaza. But there's also work that emerges from our own vulnerable stories about our fears for the future. And I'm going to take you back to the beginnings of my work when I discovered that sharing my nightmares about a nuclear holocaust um, helped me find community and others who needed to talk about their own fears about the possibility of a nuclear holocaust. This installation was designed in 1978 and repeated multiple times throughout the 80s and the 90s in different museums in different locations. What I discovered in this audio installation is that people wanted to share their own fears. And I also was introduced then to the work of Joanna Macy, who whose book Personal Power um, and Despair in the Nuclear Age fell on my head in a library. And we began our relationship then, and I started to work with her. Um, I started to do, in relation to my work, circles where people could share their own stories about their fears and their dreams for the future. It's a kind of despair work that is still being done by a group called The Work That Reconnects. And for those of you who are really interested in how to turn around despair around the climate emergency, as well as other things that may be causing despair, I strongly recommend listening to the podcast, We Are the Great Turning, which is very easy to find online. Um, when I was unemployed, I decided I was feeling very alone with my feelings of failure, and I created an unemployment or an employment office that people could visit. It was in the storefront of a gallery, and people didn't know it was a gallery. They thought it was an employment agency, and they came in with their resumes under their hands and sat down, and an audio tape went on that caused them to connect and laugh about their circumstances. We then had conversations about what it means to be unemployed in a capitalist society and how difficult it is to find meaningful work in this system. And it was, I guess one could say it broke one of the walls between artist and audience, and it was written about in a lot of journals and art magazines and newspapers, and it kind of established my career in the New York art world, a career that I eventually left because I didn't find it meaningful in terms of the kind of work I wanted to do in community. This is a piece about the numbing aspects of consumerism. It's a spiral piece that people could walk inside. It's called Please Take a Number. And in the center of the piece, there's an altar where people can leave their stories about why or what they would like to purchase that they cannot buy with money. And I installed this in shopping malls, not trusting that people would really be able to share vulnerable stories in such a context, but they did, which was amazing. Um, my work about healing body hate was done in the early 90s, and I discovered that even young female activists were worried about their bodies and what they looked like. And at the Institute for Social Ecology, where I was teaching with my late husband, activist art and community, um, I learned in an ecofeminism class that body hate is another form of ecocide. So I started collecting the stories of people who were dieting and created a project called The Fat Book. The publisher didn't like that title, so we changed it to One Size Does Not Fit All. And this artist book is still available, used online, and it helps people recognize that their
Shit.
neurosis around their body is not necessarily um, it is not a personal thing, it's a social problem, and that many of us, including people of different genders, suffer from this. And it's a conspiracy to get us to spend money on diets and to be distracted from other problems that need to be faced, or to not be in our creative self. I also created a project based on the stories I was hearing of people with environmental illness. Back in the late 1980s, I became disabled by an
Beverly, sorry to
environmental.
interrupt. Can you hear me?
Yeah, yeah.
Are you going forward with your presentation? Because for us, your image is always on the same, it's always on the first page.
Oh, no. Okay.
Because it
I'll
seems
go
like you were
back.
talking about some works, but we weren't seeing the change.
Are you seeing any changes
Yeah,
now?
now we can see it. Yeah, move forward.
Okay, so this is where I was.
Okay,
And I'll just flash back into some of the other projects that you may have missed. And
it's not changing though now. If you can try and go full screen with the presentation, then maybe we can see them change.
full screen.
Sorry about this.
Mm-hmm. Are you seeing them now?
No. We see you in front of the presentation, but we don't see the presentation full screen.
Oh,
Oh wait, now it changed.
so maybe I need to
Okay,
show
like
it.
that works. What you're doing now is working.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you, Beverly.
Yep. So this is the project about environmental illness, and I discovered ads from 1945 that were promoting what had been biowarfare products as pesticides that we could use in our homes. And I was also including the stories of people who were getting sick from these products. And I was one of them. I became quite ill because of the aerial spraying of pesticides in Los Angeles, where I was living at the time. I started painting the portraits of people who I was meeting in clinics, and culture jammed the ads from companies like Monsanto and Dow, and included stories of people who were getting sick. My son, who was watching me paint, he was 4 at the time, he said, "Why are you always painting sick people?" And so I realized that my focus on illness was not healing me. And I started to lift up the possibility that I might heal by painting healing deities. This project is one that connects me with the topic of fashion somewhat, because I used used clothing to create a giant game board for an exhibition in Germany. It was a show about games, and my project was about the rise of fascism in the US. I wanted to show how our news and media was increasing our passivity in relation to what was going on. And I figured that a German audience would be very responsive to this work. In the center of the spiral, there was a game board that people could play called The Perils and Rewards of Activism. And if you landed on a bomb, you received a discouragement card. And if you landed on a hands reaching towards each other, you got an encouragement card. And in the center of the spiral, and I use spirals a lot because to me, they represent a constant shifting in our circumstances, that it's never static. It's about change. And in the center of the spiral, people, when they arrived there, they got to tell their own story about their experience with activism. Here is the Vashon Green Map. I used to live on Vashon Island. My husband had an organization called Social Ecology Education and Demonstration School. They collected stories about what people felt were positive aspects of the community, things that needed to be sustained, whether it was a library or a community garden or other things that people really felt made the island green. I should tell you that Green Map is a project that was started by Wendy Brower in New York City when she started mapping the compost bins in the Lower East Side. It's now an international project if you go to greenmap.org. The second part of the image is the dreams for the future for the island. And those dreams, many of them have come to be. Um, Seeds, my husband's organization, also wanted to do soil remediation projects on the island using plants and mushrooms to clean up toxic soil. And Vashon was very polluted by a smelter. I got a grant to create an eco art project on the island that would heal the soil, demonstrate permaculture design, and collect the stories of farmers and gardeners. Eden Reframed was the name of the project. And here's the story hive that we created where people could leave stories. We had rituals and ceremonies at the garden, and it still exists today. And people can harvest food there and read stories and leave seeds for each other. In Seattle, I worked with a collaborative group because collaboration for me is one of the key things that artists need to be doing, not just with the community, but with each other. This was a group that came together to raise consciousness about prison abolition, climate and social justice issues, and we did performances in the street and public art interventions. I met Elaine in 2018 when I had an exhibition at Anka in Brighton, England, that invited people to think about the future and what they might be able to do to help future generations thrive, not just survive. And people had to walk through plastic trauma curtains, and they were all sewn together, and uh, they were naming problems that we have right now. And once they walked through, they arrived at a portal of possibilities. And they were invited to write uh, down something that they wanted to contribute to help our descendants have a better life, and make an object that represented something that might not exist in 150 years, and place it in the portal of possibilities. But in order to do that, they had to wipe their feet on doormats that represented our cynicism about the future. So these are some of those doormats that said things like we should just go extinct and it'll never get better. Another project that I felt was really essential to do once I moved to Tacoma from Seattle in 2016 was to reimagine the port of Tacoma free of fossil fuels. They were building a liquefied natural gas refinery in the port, and it is a very dangerous installation in the port because if there's an accident there, all of Tacoma will blow up. It would be like 5 Hiroshima bombs. So the community seemed to be unaware, and 350 Tacoma, which is an environmental group, and many of the local native activists in the Puyallup tribe and the Coast Salish tribe were trying to get people to wake up and to stop the company that was trying to put in this refinery. But their tactics were scary. And I thought, wouldn't it be great to create a project that invites people to imagine a better way to think about the port? The port is filled with toxic sites. They're called Superfund sites. And it really needs a lot of remediation. It also is Puyallup land. It was granted to the local tribe in the Treaty of 1854, but it has been violated, that treaty, thousands of times, and by colonial and corporate forces, extractive forces. So what does it mean when you invite the public to come with their own ideas and bring those in? So we went to a bunch of different events and had people create images of what they thought the port should look like. We digitized those images and had plans to project them all over town. But then the pandemic happened and that part of the project did not happen. But we did do a parade called Wake to Extinction with luminaries of insects. That was a very successful parade before the pandemic happened. I'm going to close with a number of different projects, but it's important to share this one, which is going to be going on exhibit in different places soon. When the pandemic started, I looked at my trauma curtains and I said, I don't want to look at them anymore. I have to transform them. So I started painting onto the plastic, gluing tracing paper onto the plastic and creating pandemic healing deities and stories about how we were able to heal these traumas at some point in the future. I called this work Dead Ocean Scrolls and Other Possible Futures. The idea would be that people would find these plastic scrolls sometime in the future because plastic does not degrade very quickly, and learn that humans did try and heal these problems. And for instance, this one says, we took apart the tools of destruction and patient and patiently sat with our shadow selves. And there's a deity who juggles on this one. This trauma curtain was shifted as well with ideas about how to heal the water, the air, and this one as well. And the Pandemic Healing Deity series continues to this day. I'm still creating more because I want people to have images that will help them reimagine the future. During the pandemic, my husband and I met with our neighbors and created a collaborative art project that still exists in our neighborhood. It's the Tacoma Story Hive. People were invited to write down their stories about how they were navigating the pandemic, what skills they were learning, what challenges they were facing, and what dreams they had for the future. My husband is dancing with neighbors to create cob, and the Story Hive was made out of cob and scavenged materials. And people leave their stories even today and read each other's stories. And it's a great gathering spot in the neighborhood. We decided we needed to create more events to get people excited about this project. And this is one of the projects that we did in the summer of 2022. The sound was created by a neighbor, and the drone footage was created by a neighbor as well. One of the things I feel is most crucial right now is for people to talk to their neighbors and to figure out if there's a way that people can gather and cross the ideological chasms that we have and our sense of isolation. Other, we need to be feasting each other, sharing tools with each other, and creating the kind of resilience that we'll need to move through times ahead. Whether it's drawing in the street and helping people see that we're not so different from each other, that we have similar needs, even though we may seem to be very different in our political alliances. And this needs to happen globally. Both a local and a global challenge. Thanks. So the Story Hive, as I said, still exists today. And I'm just going to close with a few more slides of work that I think crosses boundaries that I want to inspire you with. This is the work of Hans Hacke, his water purification plant It was done in the early 70s in a museum next to the Rhine River. Joseph Beuys' 7,000 Oak Trees that was done for Kassel, for Documenta in Kassel. The grandfather and grandmother of the eco art movement, Helen Meyer Harrison and Newton Harrison, who imagined different transformations that would help the planet heal from the climate emergency. And then Chris Jordan's documentation of what plastics are doing to birds in the gyre in the Pacific. Eve Mosher's High Water Line, which helps people imagine what will happen when the oceans rise. Erica Fielder's hat that she wears to feed birds, creating more intimacy with the natural world. The ZAD project in France that Jay Jordan and Isabelle Frimeau have been part of, that stopped the building of an airport. And they created a book about this called We Are Nature Defending Itself. The guerrilla grafters, who are based in the States, who graft fruit tree branches onto decorative trees so that urban areas where there are food deserts can have food. The work of Laurencia Strauss, where she creates interactive pieces. This one's called Bubble Pops, so that people can share stories about how they're feeling about immigration and surviving extreme weather. This was done in Miami Beach, and people had to write down a story on a popsicle stick in order to get a free ice cream. James Luna's piece, where he put himself inside a glass case in a museum about Native Americans to show that Native Americans and people of indigenous origin are still alive. And in this, he labeled his scars and put his Jimi Hendrix albums right next to his tobacco pouch to demystify and de-romanticize how we think about Native people. And the work of Nicholas Galinan, who's also known as Yael Yatsin, the Tinglit artist, who goes around the world looking at monuments that celebrate colonial heroes. And he deconstructs who they were and what they did. This one was done in Sydney, Australia, to talk about Captain Cook as someone who created a shadow on the land and was the beginning of the extractive economy and exploitive economy in Australia. I just returned from a project, a utopian project in Portugal, a community called Tamara. If you've never heard of it, do some research about it. I met with sacred activists from around the world who are doing projects that are very healing and transformative. And it really lifted my spirits to know that there are people working in Brazil, in Jordan, in India, and Palestinian refugees, Sudanese refugees were part of this residency. And you know, Tamara hosts amazing things for artists and people with a spiritual activist orientation. And I'm going to close with my manifesto about the spectrum of work that's needed now. We need to remediate what's been damaged via permaculture design, contextualize the causes of the damage, and expand the use of green technologies. We need to take disobedient actions and develop cultural work that interrupts the machinery of petrocapitalism. We need to liberate the commons so we can process our collective grief together and share stories that foster connection. We need to create rituals that encourage a more sacred relationship with the natural world via walking, meditation, and communal celebrations. We can collaborate on decolonial, anti-racist art actions that highlight ongoing environmental racism. We can lift up indigenous, Afrofuturist, feminist, queer, and reconstructivist visions of the world, and offer a playful and enticing portal that takes us beyond what seems impossible to overcome. And in this slide, you can see the mountain that overlooks my community and the canoes in which I plant food that I share with the community. Finally, here are some resources for people. These are all books that I think will inspire people to make work that is socially engaged, so that you know you have colleagues all over the world doing this kind of work, and give you strategies for how to do this work. If you're interested, you can get in touch with me via my website, and you can join the Arts for Change page on Facebook. And I thank you all. I'm sorry the slideshow was a little bit wonky, but I am grateful that I was able to be here with you today in my garden.
Thank you very much, Beverly. It's okay. Okay, sorry, there was an overlapping. So thank you, Beverly, again. And it's inspiring to see your work over the decades, and like how you are still trying, and you actually made a change. So I was wondering while you were speaking, like how was your first encounter with Hélène? What you thought when you saw Beverly's work? Like your first interaction, how was it?
Yeah, that was it. Oh, have we got? Hello, hello. Yes, I can hear you. Thank you so much, Beverly. I never met Beverly in the flesh because Beverly I think you'd gone out for lunch or you'd gone out for a break when I arrived at the gallery. And I'm looking down because there's a monitor here, so it looks like I'm not looking at you, but your face is here and your lovely garden and your lovely house behind. And I feel we're very honored to have you because you just arrived back from this retreat, which I was so excited to hear about. And so my first encounter was when I went to the Onca Gallery, and there were all these sheets, and it was so exciting because you had to kind of push through, you know, but you didn't quite know what was going on, and there were all these words on the sheets, and yeah, it had a visceral experience of pushing through and wondering what all this was about, you know. So that was experiencing Beverly's work. I would have liked to have known more. I think I was also studying, I was finishing my master's, so my headspace wasn't able to stay really engaged with the work, but it inspired me. It definitely inspired me because they were sewn sheets, I think, Beverly, were they? They were sewn.
They were plastic.
Yeah, plastic.
Scrap plastic that I gathered and sewed together because I just thought, you know, I've always worked with scavenged materials, whether it was clothing or garbage, just things that people cast off. And to me, that's one of the best art materials, what's free. And, you know, it's fascinating to think about how one develops
Strategies that one never imagines at the beginning of your career. I've been using sewing, and even though I never learned how to really do anything except stitch by hand, as a tool for putting together ideas, weaving together ideas. And since that's one of the themes of your workshops today, I think it's a great synchronicity that we have together.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much. So from the audience, any questions?
I'm trying to phrase this in the best way. I was really interested about what you were talking about at the start in terms of advertising, I think late 90s, early 2000s. I really wanted to ask kind of your opinion on whether you think companies have genuinely moved forward in the sense of like showing more like body positivity in their advertising campaigns, or whether you think and like more about how it's changed from that time, like, let's say 2001 till now, because there are a lot of companies like Dove, for example, who launch massive campaigns and obviously are very show different kinds of people, different kinds of bodies and stuff. Do you think that's like, do you think it's quite genuine, or do you think I'm finding it hard to explain what I'm trying to say.
I understand what you're saying. Yeah, there has been a big shift in the way that companies market what they're doing, and I think we have to be both pleased, because it's paradoxical. It's great that we get to see people of different sizes, different colors, different disabilities in campaigns, but it's also it's still part of capitalism.
It's still about marketing. It's still about spend your money because I've greenwashed or I pinkwashed or whatever. It's a liberal approach. It's not a radical approach. What does it mean when we think about clothing exchanges on the corners rather than having to go and purchase things? So that's a leap that I think we're going to need to take as a society, rather than trusting companies. But I understand that for many people, this is really important, that we are more inclusive in the way that we sell things. And but I want people to not lose their critical thinking about what it means to be doing that in the midst of capitalism, because that's what we really need to peel away.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'd like to ask a question, Beverly. I'm not quite sure how to put it, but I feel like you're a very wise person. You come from you're sort of like the grandma of sort of, the eco movement and the sort of the work that you've done, inclusivity and participatory practice. And I didn't know the breadth of what work you had done. And I've been enlightened and educated this afternoon, and I feel like where are you now with all of this? I almost felt like there was a kind of melancholiness to your tone, and I know you've just been on this retreat, so I felt quite emotional when I saw that video with the sunflower. I wanted to cry, because there was something in that was really powerful, and I wondered if you wanted to say just a little bit more about that.
Yeah, thank you, Elaine. There is melancholy because I'm in grief. I lost my husband a little over a year ago, and we were collaborators. And so I am rebooting myself as a solo. We were together for 35 years. I had an art career before we met, but it was very different. And so the Sacred Activism residency was definitely, I chose to go there to see how I might shift my focus at this point. My plan is, because I left
teaching at the university, I was promoted to full professor, but my program in Art for Social Change was not being, supported by the administration. The students loved it, my colleagues loved it, they wanted it to become a major on our campus, and it just sat for 17 years as curriculum, and students took the courses, but they couldn't actually officially be an arts in community major. And to me, that was the vision that I came to the university with, is that I'd be training students to do interventions in their communities, to create collaborative projects, kind of work. So now I have a studio that's in Tacoma, and I can meet with students there in person, and I can do Zoom classes as well. And my goal is to start teaching online, as well as to have local classes where I combine meditation, with discussion and brainstorming about what's needed in our communities at this moment. And it's a really crucial time because I'm sure people are aware that fascism is looming in the States. I'm grateful that in France and in England, there was a movement that stopped it from taking place, at least in the near future. But there's still a lot of threats here and a lot of division, and the media is not helpful. And we need artists to be working to create more sanity and to lift up more positive ways that we can move through this time. So that is my goal. And I'm also writing a book, and I have a Substack where I'm writing essays about what it means to harvest and synthesize what I've learned in this lifetime, but also what I'm noticing that is emerging in the cracks. I call them creative emergent strategies, with homage to Adrienne Marie Brown, who developed that term in her book, Emergent Strategies. And they're things that we may not notice because they're not being picked up by the mainstream media. But there are all kinds of amazing things that are going on, like, the guerrilla grafters, or the ZAD project, or Tamara, that people need to know about, that will hopefully shift feelings of despair and feelings that we are not going to make it through. That's my job. That's my mission now, is to help people recognize that we're part of the great turning. And that's Joanna Macy's term, and the work that reconnects. We can shift things. So.
Thank you very much, Beverly. And any more questions from the audience? Okay. I wanted just to remind for those who is following us from remote that it's possible to interact on the YouTube channel. So if you have questions also from wherever you are following us, do not hesitate to text us. So let's move forward.
I just wanted to say
Sorry.
goodbye. Thank you, Beverly. Thank you for that answer.
You're welcome.
So the next speaker is here with us. So I invite Alison Cotton to join us. Hello. So Alison is an inclusive artist from UK and a therapeutic practitioner based in Sussex. Alison Cotton will be talking about her work as an inclusive arts practitioner and her recent work. And Alison will be also one of the leading person tomorrow for one of the workshops. So for whoever is interested, she will be here tomorrow as well.
Thank you. And thank you to Elaine for inviting me to be part of the Dress of Hope installation and seminar. It's really lovely to be here, and we have worked together. I was slightly involved in this project, so part of my practice was woven into the dress. And like Elaine, well, just listening to the previous speaker, and her frustrations with not being able to do her socially engaged art module in her university. We were very lucky because we both studied inclusive arts practice at Brighton as a master's. We weren't there at the same time, but I finished mine 11 years ago. And I can't remember when you finished yours, about, 8, 9 years ago, something like that. So we were very lucky, and we've both been able to continue to work in this way with people. And my practice is very much involved with nature. listening to all the other speakers today has been really inspiring. Am I getting a bit of feedback here? And my work has been more to do with individual connections with nature. And this first slide sort of encapsulates my work with children in Brighton, which started during my my MA research project, working with children whose families have a drug or alcohol problem. So some of these children are not living with their parents. They might be in foster care or living with a grandparent. Sometimes these children would be living with a parent who was in recovery one day and the next day, gone, been taken into by the social services. And then they might come back and continue working with us with a different home life. So I'm going to move on. So I feel that this picture, this image, really encapsulates the connection with nature, but also through relationship with each other. And my project, my engagement with nature was very much through walking. And I have tried through this work to work with people who are marginalized or minoritized, as they tend to have less access to nature and to creativity. I've just got a little list of my slides here. This work started, first of all, I'll just zoom back a little bit in that I've always been an artist, but I also spent 15 years working as a tree surgeon. So I spent 15 years working outside, up trees every day. And when I stopped in my 40s, I connected up with this disabled group in Lewes, in Sussex, in England, and ran painting groups for them. And I was really keen to get them outside into nature. It was difficult. It's really difficult to give people that experience when there are barriers in their way. And this is a young woman with a learning disability who was part of this same group. And back to Oasis, that's the name of the charity, the substance misuse charity in Brighton. This is a child exploring the inside of a tree. So my research project with Young Oasis was to do with a chalk figure that is carved into the chalk downs in southern England. It's a mysterious, huge figure. I think it's one of the largest human figures in land art. And no one really knows, I haven't got a picture of it, unfortunately, but it's called the Long Man of Wilmington. And no one really knows how old it is. I was really interested to work with it because it says something about the human relationship with the landscape. And through my practice of walking in the landscape, I feel that is part of the, the weaving our own experience in with each other. And here you see some children actually sitting in the grass, drawing in the landscape, feeling it with their bodies all around them whilst they're doing some art. And I had this idea, like you do, of using white fabric for the children to create their own images on the hillside, a bit like a chalk figure. But you can see how the children just subvert and reinterpret my preconceptions of what was going to happen. They just, they were so creative, and the physicality of their creativity was such that this child travelled all the way back on the bus, wrapped up like an Egyptian mummy. And the experience of weaving into the landscape was continued in different ways. I'll just keep that on my knee. This again is Young Oasis. where we had a whole day with loads and loads of threads. Really connects with the dress of hope, of the weaving, and there was music playing, and they were creating these tangles, and then they tried to move through them. And here is a child who's created his own white figure on the landscape and is having a little lie down in it. Various ways of using fabric and using threads, but to actually feel the connection with nature and the land with their own bodies. There they are running about with some coloured fabric. And I continued to work at the Brighton Oasis project with these children for 10 years. And for part of that time, we ran something called the Art of Attachment. And we worked, we've already had that slide, we worked with this guy, Lem Sisse, who is a poet, and he's doing a poetry workshop with the children there. So I, over the course of my work with Oasis, worked with lots of different artists and lots of different ways of weaving different threads of the creative process together. So one of the things I've been doing more recently is Hapazomi, which I'm going to be facilitating. I think teaching is possibly too strong a word for this process, tomorrow. And it's a way of, often when you engage creatively with nature, there is no product. So that's been quite an interesting thing for me, because I'm also a painter, a landscape painter, and I do a lot of walking and working in an inclusive way with children and adults. It's like how to actually have a product, how to make something at the end of the experience that gives you that crafting kind of, you can. I can't really think of that. It grounds you, and it gives you the satisfaction and the feeling of mastery and skill that just something really simple like that can do. So this is a way of maybe collecting some natural material on a walk, and it's a Japanese tradition where you put the flowers in between two layers of fabric or paper, and then you just smash them with a hammer, and then you peel it open and find beautiful designs inside. And here's another one being created by a child at Young Oasis. And another one. So I move forward to the involvement with Elaine. This is with Berwick Church. There's a church in Sussex. We both lived quite near this place, and the vicar approached us and wanted us to bring people into the church. And we took some of the children, and in fact also Elaine's project, you came and visited with your group, and Young Oasis did this walk, and we made a map with these children for them to help process their experience of the walk and the storytelling that they did during it. And the map kind of acted a bit like for them to help understand the meaning of their experiences, and to afterwards to elicit the memory. That was the finished map. Young Oasis Pilgrims, which was actually exhibited in Berwick Church. And Berwick Church is the home of some wall paintings by the Bloomsbury artists. A lot of people from all over the world come to visit these. So which is why the church they sought funding to conserve their paintings, and the National Lottery in the UK gave them some money to do this, but they really wanted, part of the condition was to include more people in the church. So Is there anything you want to say about that part of our work together, Elaine?
Well, I think probably the first thing I would acknowledge in the hapazomi, going back to that, because Alison brought this technique that you worked with to the Hope Project, and so part of the Hope Project, the first part of the Hope Project, was as well as weaving this dress and the words, was also community outreach and getting other artists involved. And I invited Alison to come, and so as Alison said, so these imprints on fabric were then woven into the giant dress. So the Hope dress that's up at Palazzo Mora now, you can see that there are some hapazomi pieces woven into the dress, which was thanks to Alison and the wonderful workshop that you brought. And also, not only that, it inspired my teaching, and I've taught my students Key Stage 3 hapazomi, and it's a very enjoyable process. It's very cathartic.
Yes.
Very cathartic process.
Yeah.
But going back to this part, again, part of the project, part of this project was it was kind of a parallel project to the Hope Project in a way. Was Alison was working with Young Oasis, and I was working with Women in Refuge and also the Nepalese ladies community. So I was able to bring those people on the pilgrimage. So we had this, so we both assisted each other. And I think as Beverly said, Beverly Nadius just mentioned the importance of artists working with artists is really important to help each other, to bring each other on, and create opportunities for each other, because we are a big community. We're a huge community. So it's really important that we support each other and encourage each other. So we both reciprocated and brought each other into our projects.
Yeah, yeah. And I think I'm right in saying that some of Young Oasis also wrote messages of hope, didn't they, onto the strips of fabric? Yes.
Yeah, that was a lovely, also, it was a bit last minute. Oh yes, oh my God, bring the strips of fabric with me to the project. So it was wherever I went, I took these strips of fabric and asked people to write, to mark the pieces of fabric with words. So yeah, thanks for the reminder.
So, that's a child coming back a year later and remembering the experience through the use of the map. Again, connecting up with the dress, which holds all those thoughts and all those hopes within it. To create, we created a piece which we could have just done the walk, and the children could have just had the experience. I think I was really influenced with this walking and art thing by artists like Richard Long and Hamish Fulton. During the time I was studying for my inclusive arts practice, I saw an exhibition by Hamish Fulton, and he, not really inclusive arts at all, he was very much an artist on his own, walking and then filling a gallery with all sorts of things like words and, created pieces and installation inspired by the walk. But so I wanted to find different ways of doing this with groups of people, and that's a year later. This was another day out with Young Oasis. It was always quite challenging to get these children. All of these children were seeing a therapist at Oasis. So when we went out, we had to have a very high ratio of adults to children, like maybe 3 children to 1 adult, or even 2 to 1, to keep it safe. So we weren't always shouting, stop running over the cliff, so that we could allow them freedom to really feel all the positive benefits of being in nature. And it's now proven that this has a biological effect on us. And I think, there are experiments like people in hospital who have a view of a window that looks over green space or trees or something, or people who don't have that view, or their window just looks over a wall, and that there is an actual quantifiable, measurable difference between their recovery rates. So it's such a powerful thing, and I feel that we're all living in a time when we don't know how to stop the catastrophe that's upon us, the environmental, ecological emergency. We don't know what to do about it, really, as individuals. It's so much bigger than us. But I really feel that in allowing and engendering that individual connection between children, and most children do not now have the freedom that we had to just explore and run about. I mean, we were out all day when we were kids. We just went home for tea, didn't we? Yeah, we were out all day, and these children don't go out. They look at screens all the time, and they just loved it so much. And I feel like that, giving them each individually that connection with nature will create a difference somehow. It's like sowing seeds. I think this is my last slide. I'm also working with a charity at the moment called Care for the Carers. So this lady has a disabled husband who is very sick, terminally ill with a lung condition. So he spends all his time in a chair on oxygen, breathing on oxygen, and she can't leave him except for short periods of time. And she's got a camera set up in the room. I mean, she has help. She has people coming in, but they're not there all the time. She has a camera set up in the room so that she can check on her phone. And when we were doing this work together, she kept just checking up to see if Dave was all right. Yep, he's still sitting up. And we went out into some woods. She actually did a bit of weaving with grass and flowers. Just a very, very simple little loom thing. It's in her hands in that picture, but you can't see it very well. And she did some hapazomi, and she absolutely loved it. I wrote down the things she was saying during the day, which are a bit difficult to read, but the last words on that piece of paper are solace for the soul. And I saw her again a few weeks later, and she'd been doing hapazomi. She said it was so therapeutic for her that when things became very difficult with her husband, and she was desperate, she was going to cry or lose her patience with this poor sick man, she left the room, went into her garage, picked up a hammer and did some hapazomi. She said it was a miracle thing for her. So, I think that's the end of it, really. I just hope that. I think that the potential of nature to connect people up and to heal is boundless. So that's what I've got to say.
Thank you, Alison. Thank you very much for sharing not only your experience, but also the experience of the people you worked with, like the last one or the children's one. It's precious, really precious, and I agree on on all the levels. Yeah. Definitely. Yeah.
It's a no-brainer, really, isn't it? I mean, it's very simple. It's very simple, but it's something that's disappearing. That the opportunity to explore, for children to explore. Yeah.
So, from the audience, any questions?
Just asking a simple question. In terms of what the lady said on that kind of zigzag paper, is that something that you created in the workshop, or?
Yeah, it was a workshop to go out and spend the day in nature, and then to do some art, some simple things like hapazomi and weaving. But there was a moment when we were sitting together, and she was just talking, and it was her story was flowing out of her, and there was something really beautiful about it, and I just started writing it down. And she'd been a nurse, and she'd been, you know, I mean, what I wrote down there isn't particularly relevant. It was just, there was something poetic about it. And yeah. Can you read it?
Okay. Also, my
can't
mum's a nurse, so I feel like I relate on that aspect and stories that she's told me. So it says, I'm going to have a racing green wheelchair. You're not supposed to get fond of patients. I spoke to him like a human being. I'll have to do another job, and it won't be one of my patients. Time went by. I've got to get, I'm not sure what that one says. It's my grade. You won't like that, they said, but I loved it. It was the job of my dreams. Try not to work for gleeful.
Try not to look too gleeful.
Try not to look too gleeful. Didn't need telling twice, which is really sad. Solace for the soul. So I think there's quite a
There's loads of different stories there, and I just kept writing bits down because it felt like there was this flowing,
it's like a poem, yeah.
Flowing river coming out of her. Yeah.
Thank you again. We can move forward with the next speaker who will join us online. And I'm talking about Rudo Nondo, who is acting managing director at Fashion Revolution in UK. Rudo Nondo is a creative entrepreneurship consultant with over 11 years of experience working in developing entrepreneurship networks within creative industries. For nearly 10 years, Fashion Revolution has been campaigning passionately for a clean, safe, fair, transparent, and accountable fashion industry. They believe in a global fashion industry that conserves and restores the environment and values people over growth and profit. Rudo Nondo will be talking about current thinking at Fashion Revolution UK, looking at solutions to the problems we are all facing in this time of great change. Hello, Rudo. We see you.
Hi, I see you too. It's been really good listening to everything, and thank you for such an amazing introduction. I'm just going to go straight into the presentation. And yeah, let's see if we're gonna get there. Yes, we made it. So I'm just going to talk about reflections, insights, and current thinking on the problems and solutions that the fashion industry is facing. Thank you once again for the introductions. I can skip this part. But what I would love to do is just introduce the audience to Fashion Revolution. So I'm just going to play a video that tells you a little bit about what we do.
We are Fashion Revolution. We are designers, producers, makers, workers, and consumers. We are academics, writers, business leaders, brands and retailers, trade unions and policymakers. We are the industry and the public. We are world citizens. We are a movement and a community. We are you.
When I think of sustainability, I really think about grounding it in an African-centered way, that you would never do anything from what you're wearing to what you're eating to the way that you're moving in the world without taking into context the footprint and the impact that it's having.
We love fashion, but we don't want our clothes to exploit people or destroy our planet. We demand radical, revolutionary change. On the 24th of April 2013, the Rana Plaza building in Bangladesh collapsed. More than 1,100 people died and another 2,500 were injured, making it the fourth largest industrial disaster in history. The Rana Plaza factory disaster that happened a year ago needs to stay in our memories. The only way to do that really is by harnessing the vocal power of people who are shopping. Fashion Revolution was founded in the wake of this tragedy, and it all started with one simple question: who made my clothes?
What the fashion industry have gotten really good at is walking around the block rather than addressing the problems. It's important to know who make your clothes because you will directly impact the lives of the person that actually makes it.
I love it. I love to dress up. I love to express myself. But I can't do that in a fun way if I know that all my clothes are made in a shitty way.
Over the last 9 years, we have grown to become the world's largest fashion activism movement, mobilizing citizens, brands, and policymakers for research, education, and advocacy, with a global network of fashion revolutionaries in over 75 countries around the world. Since the revolution began in 2014, our movement has evolved from asking one question to many. We want to know: who grew the fibers, spun the thread, wove the fabric? What's in my clothes? What materials were used and where were they sourced from? What chemicals were used and how were they disposed of? What impact do they have on our planet? Who cut the fabric and stitched its seams? Who embellished and embroidered? Who snipped and hemmed and pressed? Who made my clothes? We've celebrated the people and processes behind our clothes, investigated the environmental impact of textile production, and showcased designers who are actively working to find solutions to the key challenges facing our industry. We've demanded fair pay for the people who make our clothes around the world. We're here for good clothes and fair pay. Good clothes, fair pay. Encouraged our community to care for their clothes, to make loved clothes last, and collectively reimagined what a global fashion industry that values people and planet above profit can look like. Through Fashion Revolution Week, our annual campaign bringing together the world's largest fashion activism movement for 7 days of action. But we remember the lives lost at Rana Plaza, demand that no one dies for fashion. At Fashion Revolution, we believe that anyone can be a fashion revolutionary. Rather than making people feel guilty, we help them recognize that they have the power to do something to make positive change.
We can help the planet to breathe again a little more, to not just buy and consume every day.
From demanding greater transparency from fashion brands and calling on governments to regulate the textile industry, to changing our relationship with our clothes, and building a community of fashion activists. We have no doubt that fashion has the potential to transform the world.
If you're an existing customer of a high street chain, you should start asking them questions through Twitter, through Instagram, through Facebook, or even in store, saying, where is this made? Can you ensure that this was made under good working conditions? Those stores will listen to customers. It's bad business for them to ignore their consumer. What we're saying is start sending that question to the retailers that they shop from now, who made my clothes? Join the revolution today.
Thank you. Now I'm going to just try and move. To the end. Okay, thank you everyone for just watching that. And I'm just going to go a little bit into Fashion Revolution and who we are and what we do. So just posed with the question today on what the problems and the solutions are, or what the problems and solutions that we're facing are. I thought it would be good for us just to reflect on the industry in transition. The video we just showed was just a reflection point, was showing you the past 10 years at Fashion Revolution. We've been around since 2014. And we posed the simple question, who made my clothes? This question has kickstarted a global movement advocating for transparency, justice, and dignity for garment workers worldwide. And in the past 10 years, we've actually introduced a global transparency index, and that was introduced to gauge the fashion industry's disclosure on human rights and environmental practices. So the core of what we do is looking at transparency and how transparency serves as the cornerstone for accountability and change. As we assess the strides made since our inception a decade ago, our focus is firstly on transparency. So over the past 10 years, transparency has gained traction, with many leading fashion brands making commendable progress. Since the launch of our Fashion Transparency Index in 2017, 86 of major fashion brands have consistently elevated their disclosure levels, some exceeding 54%. We're actually due to launch the 2024 iteration of the FDI, which is going to be focusing on decarbonization on the 1st of August. So I do implore you all to look at this issue, as we will be looking at the effect of the carbon and the carbon emissions within the industry. Another way that we try and make progress and, demand immediate action is through legislation. So over the past 10 years, we have consistently persisted advocacy efforts, and we've done this in collaboration with NGOs, activists, citizens, campaigners. And what we've noticed is advancements in frameworks. One of the most notable ones is the Bangladesh Accord on Fire and Building Safety. And this came into play just after the Rana Plaza tragedy, which took place about 11 years ago now. This has been one of the biggest milestones in our industry's commitment to safety and workers' rights. Another thing that we do is citizen engagement. The heartbeat, the core of our movement lies within citizen empowerment. So what we do is we urge individuals to demand accountability from brands. Transparency has evolved from a radical concept to an expectation, and this prompts consumers to seek ethical fashion alternatives and advocate for fair labor practices globally. Looking forward to the solutions, some of which we touched on within the problems that I've mentioned, is we're looking for cultural change. We believe that cultural change is going to be one of the solutions to the problems that we're facing within our industry. We want to ensure fair compensation and labor rights for garment workers. It is imperative that garment workers are paid fairly for the work that they do, as living wages is a basic human right and not a privilege. We also will be addressing the escalating climate crisis And this is again by prompting brands to look into their production ways and methods. And we'll do this by focusing on decarbonization and sustainable practices within the industry. So we're calling on the fashion industry to put in place decarbonization strategies and support the transition to clean energy to mitigate environmental damage. Last but not least, we will continue to call for legislative reforms, and how we do this is holding the industry accountable for human rights violations and environmental harm. And the only way we can do this again is just through the policymakers. So holding the industry accountable does demand stringent legislation. So we call on governments to intervene to address systemic issues and enforce fair practices, ensuring brands uphold ethical standards and pay living wages globally. In conclusion, business as usual is no longer an option. Our industry's future hinges on collective efforts towards sustainability, social responsibility, and ethical accountability. And thank you. I've just put on the page here how you can contact us, but I'll be happy to share this as well within the chat. Thank you.
Thank you, Rudo, for telling us more about Fashion Revolution, how it works, what is your goal, your focus, and how you are in this decade, how you made your the change. So I don't know if someone from the audience already have questions, or I can start. So I was wondering, so you are acting on many levels. So let's say from the bottom to the top, and you are trying to speak to not only brands, companies, but also to governments, as well as to individuals. And regarding these last ones, I was wondering, I hope the question is clear, but I was wondering if you have like numbers, figures of the impact and the change you made over these 10 years in people. I don't know even if that's measurable somehow. Like how can you ask someone, for example, what does it mean to buy at, just saying H&M, Zara. So you raise awareness, but then, people keep buying there because it's affordable. Like just to, I'm very, I'm very real here. Me myself, for example, I try to avoid buying there, and when I became mother, like in some cases, it was like the only options, the only option I had. In that context, then I was trying to find alternatives, and I found them. But for example, in the place where I live, there is no second-hand. There are no second-hand retailers, which, like for very small children, is like, let's go there. I mean, in any case, they will stop wearing those clothes in like 3 months, so there is no point in buying something new to me. But like this is my experience, and I don't know if you can answer like on a larger scale. So do you think Fashion Revolution was actually able to make that change, like starting from individual, like besides raising awareness?
Just as a consumer, what I would say is that we're not coming for you as an individual who has to buy clothes. All we're saying is ask the brands. So even as you're buying, just continue to ask the brands, who made my clothes? How are my clothes made? That is how we all are part of, I don't know whether you can still see me.
Yes, we do.
Oh, yes, perfect. Okay, I just lost your screen. But yeah, so what I'm saying is that what we would employ you as a consumer to do is just to ask the brands, push the brands. That's how we lobby, and that's how we get our message across. It's not by saying, oh, you've done the worst thing by going and purchasing these clothes from this place. What we're saying is hold the brands to account, demand to know how they're making their clothes. What we can do collectively is to call the brands to account and to ask the brands, are they paying their workers fairly, and to just continue to make a change that way. We've actually had a campaign last year called Good Clothes Fair Pay. It was an EU-based campaign, and just through there, that was like massive citizen engagement. And we signed a petition, and this then led to various conversations being held in different rooms with policymakers, just bringing to their attention what we were calling for, and that was fair living wages for the people that are making our clothes. In terms of our impact as well, how we usually measure our impact is through reach. So we are, as mentioned in the short video, we are across over 75 countries. So what this is, it's a global movement. So everybody in the world is asking, has this at the back of their mind, like how are clothes made, who's making our clothes, how are we treating the clothes that we have. It might be that you have bought something from a store, and instead of maybe throwing it away, are you repairing it? Are you fixing the button, or are you just throwing the shirt away? This is where that question also comes, you know, who made my clothes? But also another statement that one of our co-founders was bold enough to say was, loved clothes last. If you love your clothes, they will last. There are pieces in my wardrobe that I've had for about 20 plus years, still wear them. Certain skirts have been adopted from the 70s, but I know that every winter I will pull out that skirt and I'll wear it. If a button comes apart, you fix it. If it needs a mend, you mend it. So all we're saying is, even as you're shopping, and as you're shopping within your means, just love your clothes. Don't buy to throw away. Buy your clothes to love them, to keep them. But then on the other hand, we can also, you know, you can also use your voice. Ask the brand via Twitter, send an email. Hey, I just wanted to find out, are you paying living wages? What is your supply chain looking like? That sort of thing.
Thank you.
Enlightening. And I just wanted to ask you, how long, because I know Fashion Revolution started in the UK, how long did it take you, because it seems like it's grown hugely now. I didn't know how many countries, but obviously I did have contact with Marina Spagnoli from Italy, who was very interested in this project. Unfortunately, she couldn't come to talk, but we also have you from the UK, which was wonderful. So I just wanted to know how fast that's kind of grown, because it seems like it's grown quite quickly.
It has. So something that was actually interesting to say is, I founded Fashion Revolution Zimbabwe. That was just after Fashion Revolution started, and that is how our movement grew. It grew organically. I remember 10 years ago just reaching out and saying, hey, I love what you're doing. It is at the core of my heart, my beliefs. How can I join the movement? And I was accepted into the Fashion Revolution family. So it's grown organically. And we have, over the past 10 years, I'd say we have over 75 country teams. It fluctuates between 75 and 80, but in that we have 23 registered country offices. So these are now recognized in their country. So another example, let's say, would be Fashion Revolution Zimbabwe, Fashion Revolution South Africa, Fashion Revolution Switzerland. These are just one of many registered country offices. So this is now showing that, you know, we do have presence in the countries that we're operating in. Aside from the country offices, we have volunteer country teams who have all signed a voluntary group constitution agreement. So our movement continues to grow. We are constantly inducting new countries as well. We've just been through the first iteration of our induction program this year, and we've inducted 4 new teams, and then we're actually looking to have another 2 running over the course of the year, with the first one taking place in the summer, and then another one taking place just before the end of the year. So again, it grows through word, through action, through deed. There's times where I remember meeting someone and just say, there's this amazing movement and this is what we do at Fashion Revolution. And she was like, how do I sign up? And again, another country office was formed. So I think it is just across that common message. We are all advocating for the same thing across the different spectrums as well, and within the ecosystem, we're all dealing with different problems. So I'd say I actually sit in Zimbabwe. I sit in Harare in Zimbabwe. Our fashion problem is around waste colonialism. We're getting all this waste that is coming, and we have no idea what to do with. We just live with it. We coexist. We try and make from it. Whereas you'll find the other end of the spectrum, right? I sit virtually in the UK, and we're dealing with overconsumption, overproduction. So whichever way we look at it, it doesn't matter where you're sitting, but we're all fighting towards one thing, and that is saving our planet and saving the people that are making our clothes.
Thank you. And I just want to say there's 2 connections that I wanted just to quickly mention. One was Ursula de Castro, because I know she was involved in the early work at Fashion Revolution, and her mother is the Scuola de International de Grafica, which Alessia is talking from. So there's a nice connection there with this project. And and I've forgotten the other connection now. But anyway. Yeah, that's a really nice connection. Thank you. Thank you.
As well with our industry, whichever way you look at it, we are all interconnected. Just even looking at your project and what you're working on, this is a hope. This is hope for the industry. You're bringing like-minded people together. We're discussing how we're going to find solutions for our industry, how we're finding solutions through our craft, through our practice. That is how we move as a movement.
So you've just reminded me what the second one was. I remember hearing you talk about, this is before I watched you on a YouTube channel, talking about the importance of working with waste products. And of course, that's what the Hope Project is about, because the fabric that came to make the dress was donated by London College of Fashion through Claire Swift, who's an incredible person doing some lovely work over at the London College of Fashion, and also a workshop that's happening here at Palazzo Michiel. Tomorrow I'm going to show people how to upcycle their old t-shirts. So I know that would be close to your heart, Rudo.
It really is. Just this has been part of my journey for me to sit where I'm sitting. I've walked that walk. Firstly, I was asking the questions: what's happening? How can we make a difference? To actually let me go into the industry and see what is really happening, how we can make a difference. It's how you start uncovering what's happening not only within your local ecosystem but also within the global ecosystem. And waste was very close to my heart because I'm like, this is the problem that we're sitting with right now. How are we going to make it work for us? And this is how we're going to do it. We're going to upcycle. This is now speaking to where I sit. It's in us. It's in our blood. We've seen it across generations. Nothing goes to waste. You use every single piece that you can. As I've grown as a creative practitioner as well, a lot of our collaborations were built on when you have that, offcut, it doesn't go to waste. You're using it for accessories. We like to dress up. So how are we going to use this piece of fabric, I've seen it, I've seen waste used for packaging, for accessories, for labeling, just different creative ways, just to make sure that it doesn't hit the landfill. It just doesn't land in that bin.
Thank you very much. And we have one question. I hear Nico. Okay, thank you. We have one question from the audience.
Sorry to ask so many questions. I just really wanted to know what Fashion Revolution was doing in sense of like companies like Shein, where it's not just kind of one person that you're holding accountable multiple like mini shops or multiple like mini sellers. Like, what would be the strategy to go about that? Because obviously their consumption is absolutely astronomical at the moment.
So this is where we call on policy change. So our research, at least is the first step into uncovering what is like really happening, and then how we then use that research is actually take the facts and the data, and that is how we drive in policy change. So this is just, they are, part of the problem. But again, we call on the governments, we call on the policymakers, those that are governing in the production countries. Like, this is where we need that legislation. This is where we need to hold brands accountable. So we do our bit by calling out, we do our bit by producing research and data, and then we present it to the policymakers. So again, you'll find that it's not that we are doing everything. We can push to a certain level, but the final call really sits with the policymakers as well.
Thank you. I just want to say one more thing, just to kind of echo what you said before. I actually saw some research, I think in West Africa, in terms of reusing waste, where they actually compressed a lot of waste and they made them into kind of like concrete pavements for the streets. So I just thought that was quite interesting. I just wanted to kind of put that out there. But I think it'll be really like innovative if we were to kind of just create more useful products out of waste, really, and not just in the developing world, also in the West as well. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you for answering my question.
Okay. If there are no more questions, we can move forward to the next speaker. So we have here today with us Carlos Sara, who is going to join us in person. Un applauso. Hi, Carlos.
Hello. Well, thank you very much to the CC to organize this lovely event.
You're welcome.
And Elaine, of course, for having me.
Carlos is an actor and artist, therefore. May I say that? Okay. He will be with us also tomorrow for a workshop. So again, the invitation is still valid. If you want to join us also tomorrow, we are here. So Carlos is a physical performance artist from Spain. He is an actor, a Spanish actor based in Madrid, who spent 8 years living and working in London. In 2021, he moved to Newcastle from a change of scenery, and he fell in love with the Northeast. He was commissioned by Dance City and the Festival of
Thrift.
Thank you. To create a new work for the festival. See So was a street physical theater family show about the environment, climate change, and the relationship between humans and the sea. Today, Carlos will be talking about his eco-performance project See So, and the new developments in the acting and performing arts. So I leave the word to you.
Thank you. Such a lovely introduction. Like Michaela said, I'm Carlos. I'm from Spain, and I've been living in London and the northeast of England as well for a long, long time. But now I'm based in Madrid. And physical theater, who doesn't know that, it's when we use movement as the main tool to tell stories, to use it as a way to communication. And in 2021, I went to Newcastle, and I had this lovely opportunity to be part of a festival, The Thrift. Took me a while as well to pronounce it properly. And it was, the idea of that festival is about creating a sustainability living. They are really welcomed to any kind of artist to bring their own craft and things outside of the box. And I was thinking about a performance, and I didn't know what to make. But one day I'm going to stand up. I'm a physical actor, you know, I need to move. And one day I was, sorry for the camera woman, I was in my kitchen cleaning all the plastic, because in the UK we need to wash all the plastics before throwing into the bin. And I was quite amazed about the amount of plastic I was using every single day in every single activity. And that was my answer. I need to do something about plastic. And start creating the story. I was like, okay, the main point is going to be plastic, humans with plastic. So my first idea was like, I need to create something very crazy, like a situation like it's very dystopian, an island full of plastic. Suddenly, it took me a couple of minutes of research to realize, like, we are in that point already. There are a lot of islands full of plastic, and we made that. So I took, you can see them here, it's on the rehearsal room. I took 2 proper old fishing men, and I put them living in that island. And they are unaware about the situation. They don't know they're doing something bad. They're just doing what they've been doing all their lives, and their ancestors, and families, and their community. So, for one side, I have these 2 fishermen, unaware, so they're not bad people, just they are quite unaware of the situation. And I need to add another character to do the contract point. To make a drama, you need 2 different sides. Then I create the sea. There we go, that you have the 2 fishing men here doing their lovely routine. And you can see here is the sea is full of plastic. During the story, you have these 2 fishing men doing their daily routines. And the only thing they can fish, there's a fishing man on the boat. There we go. The only thing they can fish is waste, because the only thing they have on the sea. But during the show, we have the sea character. Sometimes they pop an apple. That was the only organic thing, non-plastic, on the show. And the fishermen are really happy, of course. They had an apple, and they were eating the apple. But they didn't know that was the sea creating this resource for them. Then they're fishing there. They have some communication between the sea and the fishing men. But while I was doing the writing with dramaturg, we had a lot of questions. I wrote down the questions, actually. One of the questions was what is going to happen with these fishing men? You know, they're going to be aware in some point. No, they're going to change their lifestyle or not. And then we put a lot of ideas, and the end was the most difficult thing. Are we going to give them hope to these fishermen, or no, it's late for them. So always we try to make happy endings, you know. We grow up, at least I grew up with Disney, happy ending all the time. But we realized, like, no, they don't deserve a happy ending. And we can't give me happy ending because I don't know what's the answer for that happy ending. So, spoiler alert, they die, the fisherman as a character, after a few attempts from the sea to try to help them and make him realize, like, hey, you are in a very extreme situation. They don't listen. And the nature had to make a choice to save them itself, killing the fishermen. But theater, of course, is about communication, is about be very in contact with the audience. That's why I'm stand up, like a nice audience. But I want the audience to be part of the show. Because, of course, we're not living that island, but maybe we are helping to these islands happening. And then the idea was to build the set with waste. Not with my waste, not with your waste, with the waste of the audience. So a few weeks before the show, we put like collection points on the city when this show happened. And people were throwing their plastics. Just in a couple of weeks, we have enough plastic for, not even a couple of weeks, for a week, we had enough plastic to build the set. And that was the way we put the audience being part of the show. They were a character in the show, not directly, but using their waste as a result. Like we can't see where our waste goes. In this time, they can. And it was quite surprising how people even recognize their own waste. People are coming to me, it's like, oh, you use my bottle. It's like, yes, and how? You know it's your bottle. We are really attached to our waste. Like even we recognize our waste. And of course, I'm not here to tell like a big speech about recycling or life sustainability, because I don't know the answer either. But making a show without preaching, because I don't like to preach, but to tell them like, look, this is a dystopian situation, and you helped me to this happened. And the nature at the end is very strong, so let's work with the nature rather than fight against her. But yeah, it was very surprised how people understood they were part of the story, even in weeks in difference. And it was quite good as well, because using everything you can see on the set, I don't know if there's more pictures, there we go. We use tires, we use leather, sticks, furry plastics, a lot of nets. Everything was secondhand. Everything was donated, or we went to a point to collect these items we needed to create the show. So that was quite important as well, because the cardboard print was very, very low, and that was all the point from this festival, to reduce an item to give like a second life, and to create from waste, do something artistic, doing some art. And I think it's the cleverest way. We don't need to, like your dress, Linda, it's beautiful. We can use waste, things people don't want, the retails, the things on the bottom of the wardrobe, to create something that deserves to stay in the first line as a culture, as as exhibition, as a piece of theater, and I think that's the way we should go. Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, the third time went well. So thank you very much for sharing your experience and like all the background, the story. It's very interesting. I was looking at the images and I was wondering, like, what was the children's reaction? Like, because you choose to give like to avoid the happy ending, like to stick to the reality, let's say. But what children said, like, were they shocked? Did understood the message? Do you think that they somehow elaborated what was going on and what you wanted to deliver?
Yeah, that's a good question. Yes. That's a question I was asking myself, actually, when I was doing this. The kind of theater I do as a theater maker, I always make a conversation, like my plays are like Pixar movies. Like you're a child, you can understand one storyline, and you're an adult and you can understand a totally another storyline. So I think the kids, the reaction were quite shocking, because the end, I don't know if that it's the end, when the sea kills the last fishing man on the top of the boat. You can see we use, and here, we can use the steps as a boat. And it was quite dramatic, and the kids mainly they were quite surprised about, oh, and that's all? That's the end? And even I remember one girl shouting, "He died!" But the line, I think, for the adults were more awareness, more like, oh, it's kind of like poetically, that was the correct answer. A poem is beautiful even if it's talking about bad things. So I think it's the same. It's more a visual piece of art with a nice narrative. But people understand not always beautiful have to have a nice ending. I take that.
Thank you very much.
Carlos, can I just check with you? So
sure.
You said that then the waste was given by
by the community of the city, yes.
And they provided the waste for the whole piece, or there was something that happened when the fisherman died that they contributed something?
No.
Okay.
There are. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
There are. When I say they are like external characters,
yeah.
It's because they helped to build that island, donating that waste to me,
yes.
To the company. But yeah, a few weeks, 1 week before, we put different locations for people can throw the waste there, and we can collect them from the community. In Kirkleatham, that was the place of this show. Yeah, but when the show happened, they were like pure spectators.
Thank you for clarifying.
Thank you.
Any questions from the audience? There is a microphone for you. Yeah, but from remote, I'm not sure that you will be heard. Grazie.
I'm very perplexed. I don't know. I don't speak English very well. Excuse me. I'm a bit perplexed. First, the way of the poesy for me, like you, is something important to touch young.
Uh-huh.
I think the lonely things who could change, it's with young.
Mm-hmm.
for us, for me, finished.
Yeah.
And I realized today I had to buy a bottle of glass to make my own gas water. I'll do this evening. I realized this. It's silly to buy plastic for half gas. And I heard the noise of plastic.
Yeah.
So I'm very happy. There is something is done by this way for the future generation. But I would like, it's a bit sarcastic, and also because I've seen a few days ago on a pavilion of Nigeria, I think, near my house, this pavilion, I was very shocked about, focus on people who are like plastic, on a mountain of plastic, and they record the plastic bottle to make the fire in her house. So, children plays with plastic to have philosophy of changing, and the others. I'm very for all the politics things is like that. But I would like to know, the question is, have you some contact really with politicians or not?
Well, I believe theatre is part of politic as well. That's why I do that as well, because I like to explain something. I not just do theatre for the beautiful of it. Theatre is beautiful, but as well has a meaning. And this play is quite powerful for the meaning of it. But I reckoned that it's not on my hand to go straight away to the politic.
They can come with...
For me, it's to go to the population. Like, of course I had the plastic bottle there too, and I'm not going to lie. I bought a piece of pizza and they gave me something to hand the pizza, probably was made of plastic. But the things we can do is very slowly, but needs to going up and up. For example, my mom, she has to have her plastic bag when she goes to the shop. And I grew up with that idea. But watching things like this makes me think, well, why I don't take my own bag, fabric bag with me when I'm going to the supermarket? I think things like this give you a hint, but because it's so in the society, I don't think even they can change it. In Spain, to reduce the plastic, they put 5 centimos for a bag in the supermarket. Everybody complained, but everybody was using their plastic bags. I don't think have to come from the top to tell you what you need to do, because everybody is a child. If you've been told what you need to do, probably you're not going to do it. So watching things like that, when I do theatre, I give a space of reflect. I got it here. When I create theatre, I make a space of debate and reflection. That is the point when people change, when they have the space to reflection about things. Say again?
It's the beginning. Reflection is the beginning.
Reflection is the beginning, of course.
It's the conscience, to take the conscience.
So.
And I don't know,
and when you have one reflection, you will change 10% of your idea. And you see something like this, you will change another 10%. Something changed when I realized I'm not going to buy a plastic bag. I'm taking my fabric bag with me.
Yes, all the time I do.
And that happened when something I watched or something I saw or conversations with people, but not for a politic person to tell what you need to do.
Some association or politics have reflection or have manifestation about some manifestation, reaction, voilà c'est ça, reaction about your work.
Mm-hmm.
You know, politics is not for, of course, the government, but some association were engaged, for example, Greenpeace or something like that. And I don't know if they have a comportment or a reaction positive about your work.
Of course, no, and it's a job you need to, as a company, you need to work on it.
Okay.
Even more, I'm telling to the camera, if it's any association wants to buy this show,
okay.
You can go to my website.
Yeah.
Because of course, they have more platform to, I have the tool, and if someone gives me the platform, I will be grateful to show this show with every single person in the world. That's always, this festival what it's for. It's a very famous festival, and a lot of people from different communities and politics comes to here to understand the situation.
Okay, thank you for your work.
No, thank you.
Thank you for your art.
Thank you very
because
much.
Because it's art for me. The movement is art. Okay, thank you very much. Maybe tomorrow I'll go.
You're really welcome to come.
At what time is it? At what time? At 9?
10:30.
10? Ooh la la, it's very... I had to wake up very early.
Thank you.
Now, okay. Now we come closer to the end of this conference, and we welcome to join us Alessia de Bortoli, who is here in person. Alessia de Bortoli is an artist and printmaker. From the name, you can understand that she is Italian. Alessia de Bortoli is a printmaker based in Venice. She works as a print shop manager at the renowned Scuola Internazionale di Grafica di Venezia, where she also teaches printmaking and bookbinding. The school was founded in 1969. It is an established and equipped studio for professional and practicing artists. Alessia de Bortoli will be talking about sustainable printmaking, focusing on new methods and materials for a safe and eco-friendly practice. And Alessia will be the fourth artist leading the workshops tomorrow. So the program will be nice and intense. I leave you the word.
Try again? Yes. Good evening, everybody, and thank you for having me here. Thank you for the beautiful introduction, indeed. So I will be talking a bit about my work, about sustainability in printmaking. So as a printmaker, I have work here in Venice as a print shop manager and teacher of printmaking and bookbinding workshops. The Scuola Internazionale di Grafica is a beautiful place where it's possible to practice and study printmaking as well as many other forms of like graphic design and other forms of visual art. It's a place where people come to learn, and artists in residence can spend time in the equipped studio to enjoy Venice and to create their own printmaking work, sometimes by just
looking for the equipment, let's say, in a place like this, but also for learning, for changing in a more sustainable way their practices. I will say from now that this is the reason why I got in connection with Elaine. So it's a place for art residencies, I was saying, and Elaine spent some time as artist in residence at the Scuola Internazionale di Grafica. I will go a bit more into printmaking, but I want to focus a moment on the beauty of a shared creative space where there is always new ideas and the meeting of different cultures. This really led the Scuola Internazionale di Grafica to be one of the very few fully sustainable studios in printmaking in Italy. In connection with a kind of worldwide network for printmaking and visual arts. So you can see in the slide the beautiful print shop of the Scuola Internazionale di Grafica from another point of view. So you see there is all the equipped space with presses and all the variety of machinery that we use in printmaking. And to get an idea about printmaking, if you never get the chance to actually experiment with that, you are invited tomorrow to the workshop. But we can see from the image the elements that compose, let's say, printmaking. There are plates involved, which can be from many different materials. Paper, of course, a variety of tools that you can see in the image. And the final result is a print on paper. So, also in this image we see the metal plate in the big image. In this case it's a zinc plate. We have the press, fundamental to be able to press the paper with the right amount of pressure against a inked plate. And in fact in the last image we see some inks on the table. Whoop. I have a huge passion for printmaking, and what I love about this form of visual art is the incredible meeting of tradition and innovation. So tradition, because the invention of printmaking really made a difference in human history. I think it's a revolution that enabled human beings to create multiples of the same image, of the same text, if we think about typography. So from the moment in which printmaking was invented, we are able to create multiple copies of the same image, of the same text. This is a powerful concept if we think about that. And nowadays, we kind of take it for granted. When we think about printing, we mainly think about a digital way of printing. But the evolution started from what is printmaking. So a more traditional approach is a possibility to keep alive an amazing invention indeed. But the beauty, I was saying, is also the invention, the innovation that we can have in printmaking, the variety of materials that we can find nowadays, the technology, the more developed tools and machines that we can use made a difference also in the artistic production. So I think that from the image is clear already, like colors, you can imagine the history, how many more pigments and possibilities with colors we have. But this is only, how do you say, like the top of the iceberg, right? There is a full variety of innovations that we can put into the creative process. With this innovation, of course, comes knowledge and consciousness. We are nowadays conscious about some toxicity problems about the more traditional ways of doing printmaking. So it's a goal nowadays for printmakers and artists to make the practice more sustainable. In printmaking, in the specific, without going into more technical aspects, there are some more critical moments of the creative process. So I put them in the slide. They are etching, inking, and cleaning up. The etching is the action of working on the plate, in the specific on the metal plate, that involves the use of traditionally acids. The inking, of course, the product ink and the product paint and all these kind of things that we need to use in the creative process of visual arts can have an impact, of course. And the cleaning up, which is kind of connected to the previous ones, but covers a lot of the work of the artist, of the printmaker, is also a very important moment in which we can question what we are using for having the job done. So here, just to give you an idea, there are images in this case of the etching. So I mentioned acids, which I would rather call mordants. Are some liquids that can actually bite the metal. They can help us achieve a nice plate with an image we can print multiple times, manually, of course. So here you see a metal plate into a more sustainable version of what was the old acid. It's chemically a salt, it's copper sulfate. It's a very convenient and easy solution to avoid the use of what is chemically an acid instead. Here is an image to represent a bit the inking phase of the work. You can see that the product, the ink, needs to be applied to the plate. It can be done in many different ways. But that has an impact in many different ways in the production, in the use of, in the cleaning up of it. And I also want to underline that we speak about an environmental impact, but we can also think about toxicity in terms of what's the impact on us as people working with this kind of materials. So in the printmaking field, the goal is to find a more sustainable practice, both for the environment and for the people using the inks in this case, and all the variety of products we can use. In this image, in the specific, there are on the left some more innovative kind of inks, and on the right, the traditional ones. I think that in nowadays practice, for example, it can be very interesting to use both, but we can put some consciousness in the using, especially the old-fashioned ones, let's say, the traditional ones, to make even that a more sustainable practice. So it's not a matter of excluding necessarily something, but to give it a thought on how to make that practice more sustainable. The cleaning up, I think it's well represented from this image. After especially our workshop activities in the teaching, we can really end up with messy areas of the print shop that we need to clean up in a safe way. Let's say that this is kind of an exaggerated day. It was really intense, so it's not always like that. But it's our goal to make sure that we can go back to a clean studio in a way that is safe for everybody. So here I'm focusing a bit more on what are the actions we can make for a more sustainable practice in our environment. There are the 3 words that one can repeat as a mantra: recycle, reuse, reduce. I made small changes, so I went for substitution. Often we need to just look at what, well, let's go through them. Substitution, reduction, and reuse. In the slides, I go more in the specifics. So substitution, I was saying, we can observe what we are using in the studio, analyze what is actually more harmful, more toxic, creates more risk in the using of. There are many solutions that we can have nowadays, again, with innovation, with further technology, and so on, to reduce the impact on us and on the environment. So I mentioned this mordants for the etching. We have nowadays way less impactful products that we can use and are much recommended for a safer practice and a safer studio. When we need to dispose of these products, the impact on the environment has a huge difference from what was instead used before. There are grounds and varnishes we use in combination with the etching process for kind of deciding where to have our image. So we need these grounds and varnishes. The traditional ones are mostly based on asphaltum, bitumen, and all these fancy products that, of course, in 1500s were what was available and what was making the job done. Nowadays, with the studies and the research, which, by the way, can be a really interesting part of the practice, doing the research of the products and the materials, we can really have a way less strong impact again, on the person and on the environment. So we don't really need all these asphaltum-based, bitumen-based materials and products. We can use something that instead is oil-based, or something acrylic, with all the studies that comes now with acrylic, because we have to keep on questioning what we are using, and even what is innovative now can be evolved even further to even more sustainable practice. We have, as I mentioned, oil and green detergents for the cleaning instead of solvents, which are so common in a more traditional practice, as well as the eco-friendly inks that I already mentioned. But when we really think about inks, I think about the pigment that goes to create the ink, the medium. So in the production, what is used to create that ink? And we can extend, of course, this way of thinking to so many other moments of the printmaking creation, but also of any other field of art, and actually also to our everyday life, of course. The second point after the substitution is the reduction. Sometimes is difficult, or still difficult. We don't have the answer yet on what we can use instead of something that is toxic or harmful. So sometimes the solution is to start reducing the use. We keep what we are familiar with, what we know can make the work, but already using a more thoughtful amount can make a huge difference. I think about my personal experience in my studies in Academy of Fine Arts. The use of solvents was guided at the beginning from the teachers, but during the practice of the students, there were often bottles of turpentine and white spirit, like just open in the studio. They affect the environment we are in, even like our bodies in that environment. In Scuola di Grafica, for example, we keep turpentine just in case the artist in residence really needs that product, but there's a little hole in the cap, in the cap of the bottle of turpentine. So people necessarily use drops of that. So it's already a small idea to make the practice more sustainable. This is in the cleaning products that I mentioned. Again, inks, it depends on which inks we are using, but we may want to reduce the amount and not waste material. Rags and cloth, which can be also connected to some previous topics. We try to recycle as much as possible materials that people bring to us. For example, newspaper, which is always necessary in our practices, but the cleaning up needs a lot of fabric, cloth and rags. So we try to just use what is not good anymore as cloth, as I don't know, bed sheets and so on. And when it cannot have a second life on its purpose, let's say, we can just use it as rags, and we wash them and we try to reuse them as much as possible. So you see, it's an amount of small practices that can really make a difference. The reuse, I just covered the topic, I think. It's we can really just look for a second life for kind of anything. So when we, it's a very common practice in the studio to go towards the trash bin and then question that action instantly and being like, maybe I need it for something else. So, of course, the shared studio helps that a lot. We collect a lot of different materials that between workshops and art residencies for sure somebody will find it useful and will include that in their artworks. Here I have some images about my personal work. This in the specific, I thought it was a kind of a meaningful piece for me. I graduated with this print in Academy of Fine Arts. So that is where my printmaking studies started. And I had honestly the privilege of being in the city where printmaking really developed a lot in the, at least in the Italian environment, in the Western world. And to have an approach that, yeah, it's more traditional, but enabled me to really be able to do a comparison between what was a more traditional practice that lasted for centuries and what instead we can have nowadays. So this image in the specific, also thematically, is connected to the topic. This is the city where I was born, Trieste. It's a couple hours from here. And at that time, there was still active part of a factory that was really creating a lot of pollution to the city. Of course, it was built out of the town, and then the town expanded, so it was in the middle of the city and on the sea. Thankfully, nowadays, that part of the fabric, the most polluting one, is not active anymore. So we got a good outcome from all the protests happening. But I always had this focus of what is not good, not healthy for us and for our society. How can we make something good out of that? How can we get a good outcome? And these are instead images that I created with more sustainable practices that I approached in Scuola Internazionale di Grafica. I arrived there and I started learning from my amazing teacher, Roberta Feoli de Lucia. And from her knowledge and her experience, I got the opportunity to travel to the US, where I went to one of the most sustainable studios existing in the world, Amaze Printmaking, it's the name. And I got the chance to really be in a studio where the practice of printmaking was so much more sustainable. There was a research ongoing that is available on their website for free. So I love their goal of spreading knowledge about sustainability in this field of the visual arts. And I went also for lighter topics in the images, I have to say. Here is a couple images of my experience from the US and the learning I got from that. So just to give you an idea of what is the printmaking production I practice and I teach at the Scuola Internazionale di Grafica. That's it. For me, the main message is celebrate change. We need to keep on changing, keep on questioning, and have a good attitude in trying to find a better way to do what we love to do. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Alessia. May I ask, why printmaking? Like, what's your story? Because you told us your present and your gaze on the future, let's say. But what brought you here, especially in the printmaking field?
I have to say it is, I would love to have a beautiful story like my teacher has one of like as a kid, the granddad working in a typography place, so the smell of the ink and all this kind of inspiration that really inevitably brought her to printmaking. I have to say it was kind of love at first sight for me, so I was not really knowing kind of anything about printmaking until I approached the university. And I knew I wanted to do visual arts, but arriving in the Academy of Fine Arts and seeing the results of printmaking and understanding that's a whole field of art, really, I don't know, it resonated with me immediately, and I thought I want to do this. Then I got much passionate about the history of printmaking and how this practice is both well, nowadays we focus more on the artistic side of printmaking. It is a form of expression with its own characteristics. Historically, it is a huge invention that really made a huge change. I always compare it to the internet invention, okay? Before that invention, the information and the knowledge traveled to a certain speed, which is usually slower. And after the invention of printmaking, as well as of internet, the information and the images and the texts can really travel to they are much faster, they are much more affordable. So it has in itself the history of spreading knowledge and spreading, well, nowadays, beauty. So, thank you.
Thank you so much, Alessia, for sharing your knowledge, especially, and your work. And I want to ask a question. It's the balance between education as a teacher and your private work, because having just finished some teaching, and I've been teaching all my life too, I wonder for you, how do you balance that problem? Wonderful thing.
It is, of course, quite a topic. I look forward to actually finding more time for my artistic practice and to my artistic production. So at the moment, you can really contact me through Instagram, but the website is a work in progress. I really want to produce a bit more. At the moment, I'm focusing more on the teaching and on the taking care of the shared space for the artists to be working in. At the same time, the privilege of working in a place like the Scuola di Grafica is that I'm exposed constantly to so many different approaches to printmaking. So let's say that I'm in the phase in which I'm collecting a lot, spreading the knowledge, and I hope I can dedicate a bit more time than what I am now to the production. Still, I kind of force myself. I feel I have the need, the necessity of making some work. So I kind of can do some during my year, indeed. Thank you, Elaine.
I have a question, which is more curiosity, actually. So sustainable printmaking. How is like the international scenario on this? Because you mentioned the school in the US, you mentioned, of course, the school here, but what is the trend? Are the printmakers going in that direction, or they prefer to stick to the tradition?
That is a good question, and it can really depend a lot on many different factors. Of course, the individual will of finding a safer way will make a huge difference. There are in the world many studios that are focusing more and more on the sustainability of the practice. So if one wants to learn, there starts being some options indeed. I have to say that Italy, it's a kind of an open answer, of course, something to debate about. I think that Italy, with the amount of tradition and history, sometimes is held back by that. So I say this just because we are really one of the few green studios in Italy. And, but at the same time, there are amazing artists around Italy that can really bring a lot of knowledge to the table and to the students of some academies of fine arts around Italy. Worldwide, it can be different. There are some countries in which a more innovative practice is encouraged more. And there are some places instead giving more value to the tradition and to the history, of course, is something more present. This is why I really want to focus on the three keywords that I put, because substitution, reduction is not, I don't want to cancel what is in the past. It's important to give value to that. The tradition is something we need, it's our roots, but we kind of, I always invite people to have a look about what can be instead, what can we do that is safer and more eco-friendly indeed. It can change from country to country.
Thank you. So there is a micro.
You represent a small, responsible arts printing outlet, but suddenly the thought came to me of the the commercial book printing and newspaper and huge quantities of these harmful substances, I assume, compared with which you are a tiny drop in the ocean. And is there a parallel change occurring in these industries?
That's a very good question, and I often ask myself this question in a more industrial point of view. So it makes a lot of sense to me, this question, because the origin is common, it's the same, it's printmaking, but nowadays the necessity of getting multiple prints went towards a more industrial world. So I'm in the instead artistic way that is more for expression. There are some developments for sure. I think that the topic of the inks and of the products we use for the making of the prints also industrially is changing and definitely can change way more. I don't necessarily have all the knowledge to answer properly and fully to this question, but I also think that consciousness and awareness is never enough, of course. So I kind of hope for a more sustainable practice also on an industrial level, because we are surrounded by printed matter. We are constantly surrounded by that. And the connection also with screens. Nowadays, we don't need the printed matter anymore. Sometimes it's just about screens. I think I will keep this question quite open, because it's a key point of nowadays to figure this out, I think.
And I assume that those industries are more affected by regulation and legal frameworks, which, fingers crossed, are changing as there's more awareness in governments, but
I do think so, and I hope so.
Yeah.
In our environment, I see, in the artistic environment, I see some products in some countries that are common in other ones start being forbidden totally. So some chemicals, for example, the biting of the metal I was mentioning, there are some countries that are really like saying this cannot be used anymore. So the necessity of finding something else becomes more real. I hope this happens also in a more industrial level, indeed.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Any more questions? Okay. So, so thank you, everybody. Thank you. An applause. So today we end this first part of, let's say, the Hope project. And as I was mentioning before, tomorrow there will be a more concrete day, let's say. So today was for reflecting. Tomorrow will be for acting, I would say, no?
Yep, that's a really nice way of putting it, Michaela. So tomorrow we have workshops, very exciting. So we have a physical theatre workshop with Carlos at 9:30 UK, 10:30 CET, yes. Italian European time. Then myself, I'm doing a weaving project. Come and do an upcycle. Bring a T-shirt, and I'll show you how to upcycle something for fashion. And help me out here, Michaela. After me, we have
Alison,
yes.
And at the end there will be the Alessia's workshop.
So Alison will be doing the Hapazomi workshop, which she talked about in her talk, and Alessia, who also talked about some printmaking on Tetra Pak. So there's quite exciting workshop. I just wanted to just reflect on all of the talks, just to say that I feel like I've learned a lot myself by listening to people talking, from, you know, just picking out bits and pieces from Dr. Julia Winkler, from Craftism, which I really helped me actually think about and how to frame my hope dress into that sort of genre more. It feels like a very inspiring day, actually, from listening to each person, each individual speak, and I really hope you've all really enjoyed it. Yeah.
For me, it was inspiring, likewise. So thank you again, everyone, and see you tomorrow.